Hi guys, welcome back to Orchid 101. I just want to take you around, quick little glance at all of my orchids, and in today's video we are actually going to be talking about how to tell a dehydrated orchid, how to tell them apart from an orchid that does not need to be watered. And this kind of just came to my mind because I'm actually doing my watering here today, and I have a few orchids that are in need of some water, and then others that are in great shape and they don't need water, but it's still, you know, their weekly watering schedule. But let's talk about how to tell apart an orchid that needs to be watered versus an orchid that's really dehydrated and it's just begging for water. So an orchid that doesn't really need to be watered will look like this. The leaves will be very firm, very straight, very stiff. You know, all its new growth will look super healthy, super yellow, you know, like this. So these are orchids that, you know, you can water them as part of your normal routine, but they're not struggling with water. You are watering them in a great manner. They are not struggling at all with water. The water that they're getting is sufficient and it's doing their job. Now, let's talk about orchids that are struggling and are very dehydrated and need water. This is what they're gonna look like. And this is how you can tell if your orchid is in need of some water. Their leaves are gonna be very rubbery, very flimsy. Their leaves are gonna look very, very shriveled, like this one here. Now they may be in bloom. The orchid can very well be in bloom and the blooms may look very, very pretty, but the leaves is what's going to tell you everything. The leaves are going to be shriveled, very rubbery, very like soft. The lines, it's not going to be a sleek leaf like I showed you earlier, or like this one here. It's going to be shriveled with lines. It's going to be curled, you know, like this up here, you know, like that. And then also it could look like this one here, where the leaves are kind of just flopping to the side of the pot. And you see how those leaves have like a lot of lines. It's starting to shrivel. It's not a firm leaf like this, nice and smooth. You can tell the difference. Now, there may be other issues with the orchid itself. It may be lack of water. It may be that the roots are, you know, rotted and it needs to be, you know, dug in deeper, or the diagnosis needs to go in deeper. You need to troubleshoot it, whatever the case may be. But most of the times, when you see a leaf like this, it's because your orchid is struggling for water. And like I said, these orchids can be very well in bloom. You can have beautiful flowers on them, but they can still be in lack of water. Now, in today's my watering day, and I am also fertilizing because I do fertilize once a week. So that's what I'm doing today. So I am giving these babies a little bit of water. Now, most of the times when leaves start showing symptoms like this and start to show shrivelness and start, you know, showing very flimsy, very rubbery, it's very, very rare that those leaves will recover. But once you start watering them again, the new growth will start growing healthy leaves. More than likely, these old leaves will not recover. I have very rarely seen an orchid with dehydrated leaves recover. And you have to keep in mind, it mostly happens in the Phalaenopsis orchid, because the Phalaenopsis orchid stores the water in its leaves, unlike the dendrobiums here. Where it stores the water in the pseudobulbs. The Phalaenopsis orchids, they don't have pseudobulbs, so they store the water in the leaves. These store the water in the pseudobulbs. So that's why it's very important to make sure that you're not overwatering, but you're also watering them enough, because they don't have a high water retention system like the dendrobiums. The dendrobiums, like these, they go through a hibernation period during the winter, and you don't need to water them. But the phalaenopsis don't. You have to constantly have them on a watering cycle because their systems are not as, they don't retain as much water as other orchids. So like I was saying, it's very unlikely that those leaves will now recover. More than likely, if you start watering them the correct way, and mines are not as severe as others that I have seen, but once you start watering it and you start, getting into the right watering routine, you will get new growth, and the new leaves that you start seeing growing will grow normal and firm and nice and healthy. So, eventually you'll start seeing the health of the orchid come back. But the current leaves that it has on it will more than likely not change the way they look. So I hope this helps in identifying when your orchid is dehydrated. And let me know if you guys have any orchids that have had this issue before, if you guys have any other different techniques that you've used to make sure that this doesn't happen. This happened with these two orchids, and particularly for me, because of the way I had them set up. They were in pots that were not very suitable for them. So I had to go ahead and change the pots for them. They were not getting enough water in the pots that I had them in. And then they were also in an area where they were getting way too much sun. Especially now here in Florida, we are starting the summer months, and it is getting very, very hot. It's maybe like in the 90s today. So they were in an area where the sun was really, really hot. So I did some adjustments to the pots, and I moved them from that area, and so hopefully they'll start, coming out with new growths and looking a lot better here in the next couple of months. But if you have anything that you have done differently, I would definitely love to see what that is. And like always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this information. Follow us on Facebook. We do have a Facebook group called Orchid 101. And thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.